Wait until you do.
There you go.
Okay. Well, good morning, 2023 state leadership. Wow. Are you guys ready? Well, ready or not, we're about to take off, and it's going to be a phenomenal year in 2023. So you're probably asking yourself, why 2.0? Well, we know that you guys went to 360 and you had a fabulous time. And you also were had some great leaders. However, the national line wanted to get with you and do what we call a 2.0, where we're just going to go over some basic things that all of you probably already know, or maybe you didn't know, or you forgot, or maybe you need some extra. Miss Tammy, I don't really understand that. That's what this is about today. This is not about me and Cheryl just showing you slides. It's really about a conversation. So let's get started, okay? So the first thing we're going to talk about is the state network model highlights. Now, raise your hand if everybody understands what the state model is. Cheryl, you're going to have to let me know how many hands are up.
They're all up, Tammy.
Good job. So look, we're successful. You guys can close out for the rest of the day. I'm only joking. Okay. So let's get started here real quick, okay? With the local networks, how successfully operating under the new network, okay? It's time to align your state networks so that we can provide guidance and support to the local networks. There's some basic things that you as a state, and we have some state liaisons on the call as well, some things that your jobs are set up to do, okay? The new state network model was structured to set a minimum standard for all state networks that must follow in key operating areas to ensure a baseline of support to local networks, consistency and member value and experience, and also the integrity of the Women's Council brand, okay? This model provides options and suggestions to help you. Remember, these are minimum operating standards. So, can you do more than the minimum? Give me thumbs up if you understand you can. We got some thumbs, Cheryl?
Got some thumbs, Tammy. I see Sonia, but I don't have everyone on my screen.
Okay.
And Molly.
And Molly, all
Couple
right.
thumbs.
Good job. So let's talk a little bit about what the state minimum operating standards are. Okay, now there's some things in here that you can't go under. You have to meet at this point and then excel and exceed as much and as far and as high as you want to reach, okay? So your purpose, your focus, and your scope, your structure, your governance structure, your events, your governing systems, which also includes a business plan that is also going to be given to your national liaisons. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Branding, communication, participation, and reporting to nationals. These are all found in the model, which hopefully you've reviewed before coming here. We know you all are going to have questions, and we're here to discuss the different elements of the model that are specific for your role today. I know a lot of you heard about Chris's vision, and her vision is actually going back to the mission statement of the Women's Council. So we're just taking the network model and matching it into the vision and the mission of Women's Council. Sure, you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I really just wanted to say that, we didn't have the advantage to be in your room with you at Network 360, except for maybe, 30 minutes to an hour. So we don't really know what you did, what your takeaways were there. But Chris's message was really clear that she wanted this year for the leadership to go back to that mission base, to bring some fun back to the network and not focus as much on the governance. So as the leader, you're the one that's going to have to kind of silently make sure that your governance is met. And that's why she wanted us to go over governance with you today because it's critical, but we don't want that iron hand.
Absolutely.
So, she really wants in many of our breakout groups, when we were getting ready for strategic planning, And our surveys that we did, the members want to have fun. They want to have education. So you need to, really need to kind of take care of all of this governance. But Chris's mission throughout, she wants this to be, we are a network of successful realtors. So just all mission based. And I think that's the biggest thing that, even though we're going through all this today, and even though it's critical, that we want to make sure that we're not giving you a mixed message on what you learned at Network 360.
Absolutely, absolutely. So talking about our purpose, our focus, and our scope, some things that you guys talked about at 360 also was that we don't want you to be managers. We want you to be leaders, okay? And some of the things that a leader does is identifying and development of leaders, okay? Those are things that you guys are supposed to be doing, not sort of cracking the whip, but identifying and developing leaders, okay? So let's talk about the development and the support of the local networks. That's crucial because sometimes states forget that that's their focus, that's their sole goal, is to help, assist, guide, and move forward those local networks, okay? And include them in activities that the states are doing. So if the state wants to put on an event, then you need to go to your local networks, get them involved so they can be a part of that with you. Not the state just put on something and the members come and your networks come. That's not what it's about. It should be you guys helping them in the events that you are planning. Can I get some thumbs up for that?
Yep, you got some thumbs up. And I would just add that, you've risen to the top, all of you, right? So at this point, your role is one to help others rise. And sometimes it's really, really easy to do everything yourself because you know how to do it. But the goal is to give others, to empower others to do it a different way than maybe you would, and to encourage them to step up and grow so that you are developing those leaders. And sometimes just letting them figure it out is their development.
Absolutely.
Just being there with a guiding hand.
So part of that would be development and support of your local networks, which includes local leader orientation and training, facilitating a local leader networking and collaboration, local network issue management and compliance. Those are some things that you need to be doing. How many of you have already put together, are planning, got dates, and set up your local leader orientation and training? Give me some thumbs up. Let me know how many you see, Cheryl.
I'm seeing a lot of thumbs on this one.
Fabulous, guys. We're going to come back.
An advanced group. That's
Absolutely.
why they're here today, bright and early.
Absolutely. The development of industry relationships and collaboration as the voice of women in real estate. Now, this includes relationships with organized real estate or industries such as your state association, your local association, your MLS, Chamber of Commerce, ARIA, NARAB, NARAB, YPN. Do you have some of those organizations already in your thought process of how you're going to do a collaboration? Give me some thumbs up. We got some thumbs there, Cheryl?
Not as many this time.
Not as many. So let's talk about that real quick. Have we thought as a state how we are going to work with our state association, some of the local associations, and or the other societies and councils that we have that fall under the NAR umbrella, such as ARIA, NARAB, NARAB, and YPN? If you haven't, then put something in the chat and me and Cheryl can come back and talk to you one-on-one about some ways that we can help you start that collaboration. How's that sound?
I think it sounds good.
Great. Okay. And of course, the delivery of the consistent Women's Council branding and messaging. That is something that we can't get away from. Also, I want to touch on something real quick. How many of you know that we have state microsites? Everybody know you got a state microsite? I hope I see a lot of thumbs up on that, correct?
A lot of hands raised, yes.
Other branding materials, okay, that you have through Women's Council. You need to use those branding materials for your local networks and for your state networks, okay?
And if
So-
you use Canva, you can just put all of the colors right in Canva, the approved colors.
And we know when we talk about branding and messaging, no butterflies, no hearts and all that stuff. It's the Women's Council brand, okay? And every one of you on your microsites, if you go into the part that talks about forms in your microsite, it's gonna give you your state logo. And each one of your local networks is gonna have their logo on there as well, and has all the different sizing that you can use for your branding. So let's make sure we stay consistent with the branding. Now let's talk a little bit about the state leadership team. We all serve on a team. So your state team would be your president, president-elect, first vice president, treasurer, and state liaison. Yes, your state liaison is part of your state network, your leadership team. Can I have some thumbs up that we all knew that the state liaison was a part of your state leadership team? Did we see some thumbs there, Cheryl?
Yes, we did. Yep.
Okay, so the president is gonna automatically, the president who automatically advances to the PE is gonna oversee communications among the team. So, do we have a line of communication prepared? How are you all gonna communicate? I know there's some things called WhatsApp, Slack. Is it just old time fashioned email, a phone call, a text? Anybody have any new ways that they're gonna be communicating this year? If so, come off mute and tell me a little bit about it.
Communication is one of the most, it's
It's
another
key.
critical aspect
Critical.
of your leadership, is making sure that you communicate everything and all opportunities, and especially value. So if your state has any scholarships available or anything like that, make sure that you're spreading the word on that, and showing the value of membership at every chance.
Correct. And Mr. Mrs. President, that is your line. That is your area of expertise to communicate with your team. And how you're going to help them to develop. And also your relationship within your state. As well as you working closely with the past president's advisory committee that you're going to be putting together, okay? So make sure that you are understanding that communication is going to come from you, not your first vice president. Obviously, you two communicate together. They help get the word out. But how you set up the level of communication is how you're going to be able to speak to your local networks and to each other, okay? Now your PE, they're going to oversee the leadership development to identify and develop future leaders, and also help with their strategic planning. How many of you are preparing a new strategic plan this year?
It's a great question. No one. Does anyone even have one currently that they can speak to? Shauna, you have a strategic plan in Arizona, or you're going to work?
Yes, we do. And we modify it at our board retreat with the incoming president. So last year when I was incoming and had my board retreat, I reviewed it in advance. And then as a board, we modified it, and it's about a 3-year plan. And it aligns back to national initiatives as well as specific metrics we want to accomplish in the state. So it's kind of twofold. It's part strategic plan and then part goals that we can meet. But we do look at it and modify it with the new president coming in case they have new goals, or maybe there's something that we learned that didn't work or we need to modify, but it doesn't change, like the whole thing doesn't change, just pieces of it change.
Right.
Excellent.
So let's pause for just a brief moment, Cheryl, because We just served on the National Strategic Committee. Matter of fact,
Correct.
still serving on it. And we are, as your national leadership line, and as the executive, we're taking Women's Council to the next level. So that should be something that each one of these states are looking at. Shauna made a really good point. She said, if it's not working, let's fix it. Let's do something else. So I really would like to know, and guys, this is just us, okay? Even though it's being recorded, this is us talking. This is really important. By a show of hands, how many of you have a strategic plan in place or you're working on it?
Yeah, we have about 85%. It looks like that they're
Okay.
either working on it or have one.
Okay. And for those of you that do not, again, me and Cheryl will get with you offline on how to start a strategic plan if you don't have one in place. And we can help you get something started. But thank you, Shauna, for bringing that up. That was very, very important because your strategic plan is going to change.
Well, it gives your state some consistency as well from year to year.
Mhm.
So if you're having any difficulty with that, where each leader steps into the leadership roles and says, okay, now I'm going to do this and change everything, a strategic plan can really keep you on target so that it's everyone, the whole entire membership's goals for the network, for your community, for what you're working on and what you want to represent. And over time can, give you that look of professionalism that you're looking for with your network. So a strategic plan is just that. It's very strategic in the goals that you want to set and keep long after you're not there anymore. So you're leaving a legacy just because there's a plan for, those moving up the line to follow. And then it's also flexible. So I know the strategic plan in California, every meeting, we meet for 3 hours and review the strategic plan every meeting.
Yes.
So, and so it's the leadership team, all the district vice presidents and, committee chairs, and everyone has input. It's very transparent and we adjust as needed. So it's a great tool to put in place if you do not have one.
And Cheryl, you bring up a good point. At every governing board meeting that you have, at every meeting where your line gets together, have your strategic plan out on the table to where if a thought or an ideal comes up and it's, taking you down a road that you've not been on, go back to your strategic plan and see, how is this going to work? Does this fit into our plan of where we are trying to go? Or is this just going to slow us down from reaching our goals? Or is it going to better us and move us forward? As a team, those are things that you guys talk about. But having it on the table at every meeting is like reminding you, okay, we can't go down this road. That is nowhere near on our plan. It's a great thought, but we have a plan in place. So that's always good to have it there. So now let's talk about the first vice president. You're going to oversee the network development, the election process, as well as the bylaws. Well, we all know how elections can get a little crazy. So come on, first vice presidents, it's your responsibility to make sure that those networks are developing and also they have an election process in place, okay? We just finished our elections for the most part, but your goal next year is to make sure that they are on a development path for that election, okay? As well as looking over your bylaws and seeing some things that you may need to change or update, okay? Well, can't change your bylaws, excuse me, but your plan of operation, yeah. So now let's talk about the treasurers real quick, okay? You also serve as the chair of your budget and finance committee. And also as well as strategic partner development. Now, I don't think we have any treasurers on the call today, our first vice presidents, but this is something that you presidents obviously need to go back and reiterate with your state leadership team, okay? So we do have some state liaisons. Can we get a show of hands of how many state liaisons we have on this call today?
Sorry, Tammy, I don't know, something happened. I can't advance, but I see several.
Okay, several, great,
Yeah.
okay. So there is only one state liaison regardless of the state's network size. As incoming state liaison in a state and the state network, you are appointed by the incoming president before the election. You are eligible to serve up to 2 consecutive years or 1 term at each year. And this is because Women Council promises leadership development. So you are also part of your state line. So let's talk about your governing structure and your governing board. Your governing board is made up of your state leadership team, your local networks, your most recent state and past presidents willing and able to serve, local leader identification and development committee chair, nominating committee chair, if not the most recent past president, strategic planning committee chair, past presidents advisory chair, and then you have district vice presidents. And also, if you have anybody in your state that is serving as a national liaison or part of the national line, such as myself in Georgia, every time my Georgia state has a meeting or goes into a governing board meeting or an executive, I'm always invited. Now, I don't have a vote, but I do have I can offer some guidance and suggestions to them, but I'm invited to every one of those. So just remember, if you have somebody in your state that is serving nationally, please include them in your meetings, okay? They don't have to come, but if they do come, definitely invite them and let them know they're welcome to be a part. It's really going to be to the benefit of your state, okay? So,
Tammy, I think a lot of times people forget that.
Oh, yes, that's true. That's true. So now in your larger states, some of you may even have some district vice presidents. By show of hands, how many of you have district vice presidents?
Only a couple.
Okay, so we're going to go over that in a little bit, not right now, but they also have a very important role in helping your local networks and the oversight. So now let's talk a little bit about services and events, okay? Orientation and follow-up. So we have your annual membership meetings, and you have orientation and follow-up. Orientation should be conducted after National Network 360 and before the end of the year, preferably September and early November. And we've already talked about that, so most of you have already done that. So that's great, okay? This can be a standalone event or a state network meeting held in conjunction with your state association. Or you can combine this with orientation and a leadership training session for your members. Please note that although state orientation welcomes for members, it's a fabulous tool. The Leadership Summit, the orientation workshop is different, okay? Now, how many of you are planning to do this hybrid, virtually?
Anybody?
Nobody?
You can unmute. Is anyone still doing most of their meetings on Zoom,
Virtually.
or are we doing everything in person when possible, or for the most part in person?
In person.
In person, good.
In person. With the
Great to
Zoom
hear.
option.
So good. So we're back to normal in most areas, but some of you are spread out in several hundred miles from each other, from your networks and your states. So using your virtual meetings obviously is still a good thing to do if you have to. But if you are meeting in person, then my hat's off to you. Thanks for coming back into the world that we needed you to come back to, because we all know that one of the secret sauces about Women's Council is us getting together and the magic.
Tammy?
Yes, ma'am.
That is the magic for sure. We have 2 questions. So Mary has a question, and then Shauna.
Sure. Go ahead.
Sorry, it was about the slide before.
Okay, we can go back to it. No problem.
Okay, thank you. So I'm confused about this governance structure and how it relates to what's in the bylaws.
Okay.
So, for instance, the bylaws state, who's on the governing board, and there's no nominating committee chair. There's no past president. So, I'm just confused.
Okay, so the governing board that you have consists of your state liaison. Consists of your state leadership team, your local network presidents, your leadership identification committee chair, your nominating committee chair.
What's a nominating committee chair?
Credentials.
Yeah, it would be credentialing.
So it's the candidate review
Candidate
team
review.
chair. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I apologize. This
Okay.
slide does need to be corrected, and I stand corrected. You're
Okay.
100% correct. It is no longer, and we need to change that on this.
You're
slide.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, that is
Yeah, you're
incorrect.
150% correct. Give a round of applause,
Okay.
because some people missed that this year. It's no longer nominating. It is
Right.
actually candidate abuse. So yes.
We had
And
a
then-
lot of confusion over elections, and I think this is one of the reasons why. But the other block that's not represented in the bylaws is the most recent state past president, unless that
Is
is
new.
something else.
Yeah, most recent state past president willing and able to serve. Most of your past presidents, if they're willing to serve, will serve on either your candidate review team, or they could also serve as the chair of the past president's advisory committee chair. Or they can also serve in the national, where you're actually going to have your leadership identification committee chair. So basically what that's saying is.
But this doesn't match the bylaws is what I'm saying. And,
Okay.
I'm a person who actually reads bylaws and tries to follow them. And so this is part of the reason that I'm confused, is that this does not match
Yeah.
the bylaws.
Yeah, I
So-
think you're right, Mary, and I think
Yeah.
we will probably need to take a look at this. Quite honestly, Tammy's been preparing for the hurricane, and I've been on vacation, and these were last year's slides and no one caught it. So we're very thankful that you did catch it, and we'll get back to everyone, because I do believe you're correct that this slide is incorrect.
I mean, I think
Yeah,
So your
it sounds
most
good
recent
that this,
past president is not part of the governing board
they're
anymore.
not, but I don't know why.
No,
Yeah.
they're not. They're 100% correct. They're not a part of that governing board, but they could serve on some of these other committees.
Yes,
So, but that box.
but we
doesn't-
need to correct
It's
that.
confusing very much. Okay, absolutely. Thank
Thank you.
Mary.
And then Shauna has a question too. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Mine was just a comment on the communications, when you were asking about Zoom versus in person. From a state perspective, one thing we have done, we don't get super high attendance, just to be real honest. But the first year we did it every month. And then this year we went to every other month, but we do about 6, maybe 5 every other month Zoom calls. We call them Wow Wednesdays. And they're usually a topic that is timely for that time of year. So maybe it's what's mid-year all about, and why would you want to go, and what do you need to prepare, or getting your budgets together. We've done other topics. We did a topic around tax season, like how do you file your taxes? So we promote those to all members to attend. And it's just kind of timely information that either a member who's interested in serving or learning more about Women's Council would have benefit from, or it impacts a specific audience like our treasurers or, somebody like that. So that's just another form of communication in addition to our large meetings that we're doing just to try to touch our membership. And also sometimes we get some board meetings on those and some board members on those, and sometimes they don't come to some of the other calls we have where we might have the same information but more condensed. So it's just a way to make sure we're touching everybody or giving everybody an opportunity to attend. So those of you who are in the bigger states and maybe only get together a couple times a year. Zoom is a really great way just to put some topics out there for your membership. And but don't be surprised if your attendance isn't huge. Ours hasn't been, but we definitely feel like the people who come are getting value out of it. So we're going to continue with it in this next year. So just another way to touch your members and bring up other leaders who may be interested in learning about other positions.
Yeah, that's a
Absolutely.
great point, Shauna.
Definitely.
Use it in a different capacity than we were during the pandemic. I think is a
Absolutely.
really good.
Especially when you're saying it touches other people that can't come to your events, but they will attend a Zoom meeting. So I love that you're offering other events and other activities through Zoom. So that's great. And I think we all should consider using the Zoom world for that as well.
And
So-
Tammy, we had a suggestion from Adam, if we could correct that slide, or maybe if there's anything else along the way too, and send these out to everybody corrected. They would
Absolutely.
appreciate that.
We will most definitely make sure that is corrected before we send this out to you. So yes, Adam, we will send that to you, okay? Okay, so now let's talk about, I'm trying to get back there, leadership development, cultivating, and programming. So let's talk about leadership development in programming. Something that I'm hearing a lot of conversation about is where we are planning on doing leadership webinar series offered to the membership throughout the year. Has any state thought about doing that, where you actually conduct a leadership webinar series where you can start it at the beginning of the year and carry it all the way to the end? Do we have anybody that's looking to do that? And if so, I want to hear something about it.
I don't see any hands. If you do, if you could just unmute and let us know.
Okay. Well, if there hasn't anybody thought about that, I want to encourage you guys to think about doing that. Shauna also made a good point about maybe doing it on Zoom, not necessarily where they have to come and meet someplace, but maybe doing a 30-minute, your leadership team getting together and talking about leadership and what that means. Doing just a small series, maybe a 30-minute series where we can go out to your members about leadership. So there's been some talk about that, and I really love to see some of the states get involved in that. How many of you also are planning on doing a PMN course this year in your state?
Maybe.
Several?
A few,
Tammy?
yeah.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
This is Liz Bowen.
Hey,
I'm wondering if you could help me real quick, because I've been trying to find out when National is going to be providing PMN instructor train the trainer, which is required to teach a class.
yes.
And I haven't heard anything back from Olivia. I thought it was going to be hopefully at National Convention. But
Okay.
can you find out for me? Because I've attended 2 PMN classes
Sure.
to audit them, but I can't
Okay.
get permission to teach until the train the trainer class.
Absolutely. We'll get back with you for train the trainer.
Okay, and I have a
Anybody else?
second. I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
I have personally questions about how to not step on my local network's toes. And I know that local networks events also need to be, or should include leadership training as, part of what they're doing.
Mhm.
So I worry that if we were to put on a webinar series, instead of having a day of leadership training, that my locals are going to be like, you're doing my job again. You're taking away from the value that I'm trying to provide to my local members. How do you feel about that?
So let me just make sure I understand the question. So you're saying that you believe that the local networks may be offended if you did a state leadership webinar session?
For the general membership, because it would take away hypothetically from the leadership development training that they're trying to provide to show value to their local members.
Okay, well, maybe a way for them not to feel that way is to have your local presidents perform the seminar. it would come from your local, that's a way of taking your local networks and including them in something that the state is doing. I don't see where you would be stepping on their toes, because your responsibility is also to develop leadership within the local networks and the local network team. So I don't quite see where you would be stepping on their toes, especially if you're including them in that training, in that seminar. Does that make sense?
Sure. And so if we were to do something like that, it would check the box for leadership development training without having to have an entire day devoted to that topic, correct?
And also collaborating. You'll be collaborating with your local networks as
Great
well.
idea.
And Nicole has a good suggestion. She said, I was thinking of having each network host one of these leadership webinars, and she has 4 webinars, so it could be quarterly, which is another great idea.
Perfect. Yes, you're including, you were, and because really when you think about it, when the state puts something on, you want to bring in your local presidents, because they're what? They're boots on the ground to the members. So sometimes the state can send something out and the local members may not really, they don't get all the warm and fuzzies. But if you include those local presidents in there and they know their president's going to be, presenting, you're going to have more involvement by including those local presidents. And wow, what a great way to see your leadership shine. And it also lets you say, that's a great person that we could possibly think to bring in up to the next level on the state line. So it's a great way for you to collaborate and also see your leaders in action. So it's a win-win all the way around. So I hope it works out. We definitely want to hear throughout the year how those seminars are going. Okay. Any more questions?
I think, Shauna, do you have a question?
Just a comment on that. So one thing we've done in the last 2 years with PMN, state doesn't put it on because of exactly what Liz was just talking about, because the networks put it into their plan to want to deliver it. But what state does is any networks who are talking about putting it together, we ask them to get together as a committee and plan the dates so that they don't have any conflicts and there's enough time between the PMN classes to allow people to get that certification, so that we're not having 3 PMN classes in 1 month, and that they're geographically around the state. So that so what worked really awesome this year is 2 networks came together in Southern Arizona and provided a class. And then in the Valley, where we have 4 networks, they came together and offered 2 different classes on 2 different sides of town. And then they invited in a further away network, and that network committed to bring a carload of people to that PMN class to also kind of help. So it got all the networks involved in delivering a PMN class. It got them all working together, and then it alleviated overlap in the state so that they would all be well attended. And then to further that, they offered it nationally, so via Zoom. And so our PMN classes were really well attended because we would always have a whole handful of Zoom people attending nationally. And then the state, what we did to support that is we would go to, so I made sure I was at the PMNs, did an introduction, talked about why it was important to show our support regardless of where the PMN happened in the state, so that we were backing up the presidents, but we allowed the presidents to kind of run and own it with that cross-network committee. So that is a great way for state to bring everybody together, but then you step back and let them do kind of the work, and then you show up to be a support. And of course you ask them along the way, what can you do? So like we also did all the marketing statewide, because they only can market to their network. So that really helped them out to get the message out across the state. These classes were going on. So that's where state was able to provide a lot of value.
That's
And
awesome.
then just finally on statewide communications, we implemented last year we implemented, but this year it's going a lot stronger, is our networks submit by the end of the month all of their next month's events. And state puts together a beginning of the month email to all members that says, here's everything going on in the state. We want you to join us, and we send it out.
There's that
And if
communication.
Yeah, and if our Arizona World Tours is having something, then that is included because it's state to state.
Mhm.
And that's been really awesome to watch the cross network attendance. It is just increased. It's been amazing to watch the other networks attending other networks events and getting involved and participating. So it's a great way to build synergy across your state, especially if you have a lot of networks that are within driving distance that's reasonable. And then it helps promote the smaller areas and get them kind of on the map. And some of our smaller areas have done the most creative things, and now everybody gets to see what that is. And now bigger networks are copying what smaller networks are doing. So it's just a really good feel good to create that camaraderie between the networks.
That's excellent. That's
And
that's
Shauna, what you're talking about, because you're an outgoing state president, is so important to the incoming state presidents, because exactly what Shauna is doing is how we want you to feel at the end of next year.
Yeah.
Really super proud of the people that you watched grow, because there's nothing like it. It's just so beautiful. It's a beautiful feeling. And so when you empower them and let that happen, it's what leadership is all about. And
you're looking at your future leaders too, Cheryl.
Yes.
You're watching them in action. Now, let me throw something else in here. So by a show of hands, how many of you are going to try to do a PMN class this year and do what Shauna said, bringing it on from your local networks, but the state communicating it? How many of you are planning on doing that?
No one. Just
No,
Liz is.
Okay. So let me throw something else out there at you. What also you can do is talk to your state association who has education programs. Ask them if they would collaborate with you, and your state association can take that conversation to all of the members that are part of your realtor association. We do that in Georgia. Our state does all of our communication out to all the members, and it's at the state association where we meet. And they collect all of the funds. They do everything. They put the little books together and everything. So talk to your state association as well to help you, because again, they'll be able to reach some realtors that aren't quite members yet with Women's Council, but would love to come in and try to get their PMN designation. Some just like getting additional education. So think of doing something like that as well. But I encourage all of you to host a PMN course. And Shauna, I would say that you probably have quite a few people that are going to be pinned with their PMN designation at the next conference. And that's such a win-win, guys, when your members can walk across that stage and get pinned. So let's look at that. If you need any more information on that, if you go to the WCR.org website and look up the Performance Management Network PMN, it describes everything you need in order to do a class, okay? Or if you need anything at all, remember, we're here to help.
And Tammy, I just wanted to say, we've got 15 minutes. We might need to move through
Sure,
the
I'll
next
do it.
5 or
Okay.
6 a little quickly.
Yes, ma'am.
But new network cultivation, I mean, we should just maybe let everyone know how well we're doing with new networks. And
Absolutely.
so if you know of anyone, just, we'll cover this later, but if you know of anybody out there, just let us know. And the program we have in place to start up these new networks is very successful right now. So a lot of
Absolutely.
demand.
So now let's look at the role of the state liaison real quick. And let's look at the general oversight and the scope of the state liaison. Okay. This role was designed to be pivotal in the success of the organization as a whole, to better serve and deliver our mission to our members. It is designed to enhance communication and understanding the issues and, importantly, the achievements. The state liaison's main roles is to network, in your networks, to straddle the states, the network, and the national and local levels. So your sole scope right here, state liaisons, is two-way communication. You're speaking up to the national liaison and you're speaking to your state president, okay? And to the local network. So you have your main focus is to support the local networks and ensure that they are having compliance and they're following their standards. If there's something that's going on in the local network, you need to communicate that with your state, okay? And then your state and you can work together with your national liaisons to help with any oversights. But it's also your responsibility to talk about achievements, good things that are going on as well, not necessarily just what's not going right, okay? Any questions in regards to that, state liaisons? I can't see anybody. Can you see them, Cheryl?
No.
Okay, so some of the ways you guys can follow up is phone calls and chats. Please try not to fill their emails, you know, with just inundated with dates and things to do. Give them a call, talk to somebody on the phone. Don't just send them emails. Make it be personal, okay? I'm trying to.
Since
move
we
on.
have so many state liaisons, I was California's state liaison, and I'll tell you, I had almost the same agenda every phone call. So with anyone I talked to, I would send an agenda ahead of time so that all the items that I wanted to talk about came first before anything they may have wanted to talk about. So this is a great leadership tool to use an agenda for any type of a meeting that you're going to have.
And I would plan having maybe a monthly meeting with the local presidents. Has anybody thought about doing that, putting together a monthly or a quarterly get together with the local presidents so they can, you know, talk to you about some things that are going on? Obviously, if you're there for support and for intervention, you need to talk to them more than you know, every 3 months. So does anybody have anything lined up already that they're going to be doing as a state liaison?
I have a question.
Yes.
So at 360, one of the questions that came up that was kind of challenging to hear an answer to was if the state president is reaching out to the local network presidents once a month or once a quarter or every other month, does the state liaison really want to do it the same so that they feel like I just went through this with the other person?
Uh-huh.
I'm wondering if anybody has any experience that they could say, you know, would this be better done together? Can you give us some tips on how to make it seem like we're not, you know, making them do the same thing twice from the state?
Well, so what you're saying is your state president is doing a monthly call with all of them.
I think it has been that way in the past. I mean, Nicole, speak up if you have a different plan, but I know that that was one of the questions at 360 that came up with a lot of back and forth on, and then, you know, listening to the local people respond to that. I don't think that, you know, 2 phone calls a month is too much work, but if they feel like you're doing the same work twice, it's not.
Well, I think what probably could happen, and Cheryl jump in, I think that the state president and the state liaison need to communicate, there's that word again, about how they want to communicate with the locals, okay?
Absolutely.
Because your state president, their role is the communication, but the state liaison, you're there to help, to support. Here's the slide that talks about, you know, intervention, making sure that you're doing your checkups. So I would see if you two could collaborate together, because obviously you're part of the line together. You should be communicating with each other and communicating with those local presidents together. I don't see why you couldn't have a call on your own and the state president have a call on their own, but it should be something maybe you guys.
It's just a very fine line that
Yeah.
you're walking as the state liaison. And so keep in mind that anything you do, make sure that you've already discussed that with the president and that you
Right.
two are on the same page
Correct.
first before, you know, making any of those phone calls. And once you're on the same page, it should all be fine. And Shauna, I think you have a suggestion.
Yeah, so we had the same situation where we were doing our president's calls with the president. And I got a real aha moment at Network 360 this year. One thing we have to keep in mind is the state liaison position is rather new. And so I don't know that this had ever really come up before. And when I was at 360, I was like, I don't think the president's supposed to be having the call. It should be the state liaison having the call. Now, we always invited our state liaison and DVP to those calls because we hold a president's call and we hold a president-elect call monthly. So I talked to my incoming president and said, how do you want to do this? Do you want me to lead, take over the president's call and invite you as you're able to attend? And she was like, oh, yes, please, thank you. That would actually relieve me because I have to run all these other calls. So we just talked about it and made the shift because per the governance, what I heard at Network 360 and the hierarchy is the local presidents are reporting to the state liaison. They're not reporting to the state president because the state president is running their network. So
Let's look at
the state liaisons need to take a more active role. And so that's what we're going to do. But we always invite the whole board, if anybody wants to attend those calls. But most definitely our state liaison has always participated. We're just shifting who leads it.
Let's look at, if we could, Cindy, move to slide number 13 real quick. It's going to say state president or state liaison. Let me know when you have that slide up. Cheryl, is the slide up?
Yep, it's up.
Okay, so state presidents provides leadership and direction for the state network, keeping the leadership team focused on the mission of the Women's Council State Network strategic plan and growth and effectiveness of the local networks in the state. Acts as a voice for the Women's Council brand at the state level, representing the state network with related groups such as your state association. State liaison monitors and supports local network and ensures compliance with local network operating standards. Acts as a I can't say the word.
Conduit.
Conduit, ma'am, of information between local, state, and national on network issues, trends, and compliances. Both act as leadership role models and create an environment fostered in development of leaders throughout the Women's Council. So the state liaison is going to monitor and support the local networks to ensure compliance. And then the state president is actually going to be focusing on the state. It's the state liaison's responsibility to take that up to the state president. If there's any challenges, if there's some great things going on, that's their responsibility to carry it up to that state president. Then when they report also to the national liaison, then they share that same information with the national liaison. So again, the key word in here, and we're down to like 4 minutes, and we could probably talk for 2 hours, is communication. So the state liaisons need to speak to the state presidents and find out how they are planning on speaking to the local presidents. It's really difficult to tell a state president, I don't want you talking to the local presidents, okay? Because their responsibility also is to keep that team focused. But letting them know that you do understand what your job is and that your job is to monitor and report back, maybe that will give them that peace of mind to maybe pop in on your call while you're having your call. Does that make sense?
Perfectly.
Perfectly. Okay, so obviously we are at a time, almost at a time, guys. But how many of you have taken anything different from the 2.0 than you got at 360? Has this helped a little bit, having a little bit more open line of communication here?
Tammy, let's try and get through like the next, just
Sure.
really quick, like
Okay.
resources and tools and the nitty gritty report, just at
So-
least to mention it and hang
Right,
in
so-
there if you can.
Correct. Hey, if you gotta go, but if you can stay.
I think
stay.
they know the resources, right?
easier.
So we can move to the nitty gritty. And, the nitty gritty report, your state liaison needs to turn in. So she'll come to you for information and try and get those submitted. They're quarterly, so expect those. And then go to the reporting requirements.
For national liaison, yeah.
Yeah, so these are the reporting requirements to national liaison. So the state liaison has to, report. And you can see on here exactly what's required. The local compliance to the model, the chartering of new networks. If you have any struggling networks, successful networks are just as important, and emerging leaders. So these are all the really big things that we need to be reporting. And then the state president would need to provide the state affiliation agreement, which is probably already done, state budget, and state strategic plan.
Right? And now here's a timeline, and we'll get these slides to you guys as
Yeah.
well, once we make that correction on the other slides, okay? And you'll have all this that we're showing you.
And then we can probably skip through the DVPs, don't you think, Tammy,
Yeah.
in the interest of time? I
Yeah.
think they know what a DVP is, and we'll go all the way down to the, I think, system of follow-up with the local leaders.
Yep, let's
Is
go
that
there.
fine?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so your system and your follow-ups are critical. And I mean, I've heard such great things from all of you. I think that you're all going to do phenomenal this year. Just remember, you want to, the primary purpose is to, support the success of the local networks and leaders, the state network. And so your communication with those local network leaders is critical. And developing those systems just to ensure that your communication is developed and distributed on a regular basis is essential to success. So, and then we can move to the next slide, which is, I think, subsystems, right?
Yeah, it talks about some of the different things that you need to start planning for the fall, late fall, early winter, spring, summer, fall. So there's just some different things that you can follow. This is just a timeline that we want you to be able to take a look at. And we'll make it this slide as well.
Just remember, open, honest, regular communication is so important, and just being transparent.
Yeah.
Transparency builds trust amongst everyone.
Absolutely. And remembering your roadmap for network leadership, that is also going to be coming to your networks. Make sure that your leadership, make sure that you disperse that out. There's great information in there that you can send out to your local networks as well. So all of you should know about the roadmap for network leadership.
Yeah, and even though it's for network leadership, beg, borrow, steal, share it with everybody.
Absolutely.
It's like a cheat sheet for you for communication.
Absolutely.
And the successful leader wears many hats. So would love to see everybody include with their core leadership team some team building, and just to inspire and lead your group. You wear many hats for sure. You're the person that's cheering them on and pushing them and providing encouragement. And all of that will move your team forward. So just kind of envision this rowing race where you're the person, cheering them on, telling them what to do, how to use their paddles, and to win at the finish line.
Absolutely. Have fun.
Have fun.
One of the things that we really wanted to say to you guys is to have fun. Let this be a phenomenal year for you. Remember, you're building leaders. You're not a manager. You're here to train and bring leaders forward. But
let's go back, Olivia.
Yeah.
I mean, Cindy. Sorry, Cindy. One more. So I just wanted to say that with the rowing, if you could just remember this slide in your head, because if everyone rows together,
yeah,
instead of one person in front and one, just remember, you want to get them all rowing together to get to the finish line together. And then correction does much, but encouragement does more. I love this slide because I read that encouragement is oxygen to the soul.
yes.
That we all need encouragement. So if you can remember that, that's pretty profound, that oxygen is the difference between life and death, and encouragement could be the difference between the life and death of someone's dream, a hope, or a plan. And it has a compound effect on others and ourselves. So when we encourage others, we naturally begin to encourage ourselves, and encouragement is oxygen to the soul. So be very generous with all of your encouragement. And it is a key leadership skill.
It is, it is.
And
the
then
next-
the last slide is just
Yeah,
start with the end in mind for 2023, to leave everything better than you found it. Leave
absolutely.
the state, the network, the position, wherever it is, and leave the people better than you found them. So I think if you could make it a year about fun, mission-based membership, have great events that raise money, great communication, and use a teamwork approach where everybody's rowing at the same time, then you'll have a pipeline of new and emerging leaders for your network and for the council. And that's what we're cheering on for all of you.
So we can stop recording if you want to stop recording, Cindy, only because for those of the